Welcome to the As One Voice podcast. I've been toiling for the past couple weeks trying to figure out how I'm going to actually start this off. I think the important thing is to understand that this is prompted for the simple fact that the Department of Veterans Affairs and the copious amounts of things that they get away with has finally pushed me to the point where I'm organized enough to do something about it. So I've actually been reaching out to a lot of veterans who are willing to be interviewed to explain their experiences with the Veterans Affairs and the military and some of the whistleblowers who actually exposed the VA for the bad things that they do constantly. So I have greater than a decade of experience of how bad they can actually treat a veteran. And matter of fact, I'm still battling them. And enough is enough. So it doesn't just go as far as the VA, it's also the politicians that actually allow the VA to get away with a lot of the things that they get away with. So it's time that this came to a stop and we actually hold people accountable. So this is predominantly for helping other veterans to, one, get their story out, but also for other veterans to get a heads up about whatever facilities that other veterans have had bad experiences with, that they can actually listen to the podcast and understand that the facility they're being sent to may not be a great facility, and give them a chance to call and request another facility to go to, which happens quite often. And matter of fact, the VA is actually trying to do that to me again right now. So with that being said, I'm going to try to leave my opinion off as much as possible. However, with the amount of years that I have with them hammering me, I don't have a very high opinion of the VA. I always hope for the best, but you kind of have to expect the worst when it comes to the VA, because if something nice is happening to you, what you don't see in the shadows is something bad getting piled on top of your case. So as it stands right now, I have thousands of cases ahead of mine sitting in Washington, D.C. that the VA is now trying to hide. So the moral of the story is that the Facebook group, the like page, this is all just to get the information out to help other veterans and to provide some information that veterans might not actually know and need to know, because it benefits them to be proactive about their own case. So I guess this is how it's going to start. So I've been out for much longer than 10 years and had gotten injured a couple times while I was serving in special warfare. And it's because of that I have a laundry list of disabilities that I get to carry with me daily, which is nice. With that being said, I've been having to battle the VA for any sort of support of those disabilities, because regardless that it's in my records and regardless that it's proven that it's chronic, the VA feels the need to keep dragging me through the mud. One of the main reasons why the VA has targeted me was because of a congresswoman who helped me out right before I actually got out of the military. She actually snatched up the Secretary of the Veterans Affairs and brought him to the office and said, "You ain't leaving here until you tell me what's going on with this guy." So my goal was trying to help my fellow teammates behind me, so that way when they were discharged or retired out of the military, that they were covered because of the job that we did. So needless to say, when she didn't get reelected, the congresswoman that is, the VA decided to up their game and apply the pressure. And it has been that way for greater than 10 years now. So with that being said, I've been constantly trying to help other veterans out by letting them know what I experience and how to avoid experiencing what I experienced. And it comes down to the mere fact that what I have learned, unfortunately, most of it has been learning the hard way. And because I learned the hard way, it has allowed me to help other veterans avoid the same circumstances that I ended up having to succumb to. So with that, it's not an easy journey for sure, but when you start hearing some of these interviews, and you start realizing that some of these people have battled for 20 plus years just to try to get some sort of solution, the average civilian is not going to understand the immense amount of stress that puts on the veteran to have to constantly battle for disabilities that they got while they were serving their country. It's not to say that the average civilian is ignorant. What it's saying is that when we've become numb to veterans, and unfortunately the media helps with that. And when you become numb about veterans, there's a lot of people that suffer, a lot of veterans that suffer who desperately need help. There are veterans that are choosing whether they want to have their pain medications or if they want to eat. So it's not an easy road to hoe, that's for sure. So there's a lot of issues that exist out there. So my goal is to expose what I can expose and get these veteran stories out in order to help them out. It'll give them closure. It'll let them know that there's others out there just like they are, and their story is going to help another veteran story. The sad point is we still lose over 20 veterans a day to suicide, and the VA likes to put out headlines that say, well, only 6 of them have actually sought VA care. And so that means, the rest of them, they haven't pursued VA care, because if they did, we could probably help them. But what the VA is not telling the public is that the majority of veterans that are not pursuing VA care is because they hear the horror stories that us veterans have about VA facilities. They see the headlines. They see that the VA is exposed almost daily in the headlines from watchdog groups, showing the corruption, the waste, fraud, and abuse, veterans dying because of lack of care, horrific conditions that the hospitals are in, unsanitary, just poor conditions. Now, the headlines might put out that a veteran committed suicide in the parking lot, but the VA will play that off and keep sending out memos to veterans saying, hey, firearms aren't allowed on VA facilities. That includes the parking lots. That's not going to stop veterans from killing themselves on VA property. And I believe that the main reason why veterans are killing themselves on VA property is because they're sacrificing their life. 1, because they can't take it anymore. They're tired of the abuse. But 2, their last selfless effort to bring attention to that specific VA facility by killing themselves should bring a lot more attention than it actually does. There was an officer, a high-ranking officer, that committed suicide sitting on his own medical records on the steps of a VA office. I think it was either a regional office or a hospital, but he killed himself right there on the front steps, sitting on top of his medical records, and he left a long memo stating why he did so there'd be no confusion whatsoever. And him, just like the other veterans, were trying to bring focus to that specific VA facility. So the public needs to understand that one of the big reasons, if not the biggest reason, that veterans are killing themselves on VA property is specifically to draw attention to that VA facility and their treatment or lack thereof that they experienced. So it's pretty bad when a veteran has to, in order to stop the VA abuse and actually find some peace by taking their own life, is a travesty in itself, and it should never have to be like that. However, that is the current situation that we're in. So my ultimate goal is to try to reduce that number to 0, which I don't think we'll ever get to. However, if you don't try, it's never going to happen. So at least I'm trying to put forth the effort, and this might not go anywhere, and I don't care about that. I'm not doing this to make any money. I'm not doing this to gain publicity. I'm not doing this for anything other than to help my fellow veterans. So far in the shadows, I've been able to help out almost 100 veterans avoid the same horror story that I've had to go through for the past 10 plus years. So that to me is success. As I tell others, you got to celebrate the small victories, and that's a small victory. We haven't won the war yet. So I'm going to constantly try to request a sit down with the Congressional Committee on Veterans Affairs up there in DC. I'm going to constantly reach out to the politicians and actually get them to commit one way or another to what they're doing without any hemming and hawing and without them trying to put their little twist on their answers. No, I'm going to make them commit to a specific subject and have them answer those questions as clear as humanly possible. And then I'm either going to talk about it or I'm actually going to publish on this podcast the interview. So that once it's in print, people tend to hold on to their word because it's out there, and if you can prove otherwise, they're not going to get reelected. And that's one of the biggest things that all of these politicians want, is to get reelected. So my goal, my hope is that whoever decides they want to listen to this podcast, to spread the word to your friends, family, and ask them to spread the word. And hopefully this will start reaching more and more veterans, and they'll start reaching out, and I'll start talking to them and start getting their interviews out there so the public can hear it. And with any luck, we'll be able to go nationwide and actually be able to help even more veterans. Somebody's got to do it. And worst case scenario, start up a nonprofit organization where 100% of all funding goes straight to nothing but helping vets, building small veteran towns, whatever, I don't care. The main thing is to take care of our nation's veterans, because they should be taken care of after them hurting themselves, getting injured, losing limbs while serving their country, only to have to battle harder when they step foot back into civilian life is just piss poor, if you ask me. So thanks for listening. This is just the introduction, so I guess we can call this episode 1 introduction. Everything after that, I'll actually have probably in the title of the episode what it's going to be about, or who it's going to be for the interviewee, what we're going to talk about, whatever. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Anyway, it'll probably be in the description at the very minimal, but go to the Facebook page and join the group, which is As1Voice, the number 1. So AS, the number 1, VOICE, and the like page, because I'm going to be publishing the podcast on there, but I'm also going to be attaching documents that I've acquired along the way that'll help the veterans out in requesting certain things, the parameters for the Freedom of Information Act requests, and so forth. So please go to the Facebook page and the group, like it, follow it, whatever you want to do, but pass the information. I mean, you're going to be on Facebook anyway. Take the effort, pass it on to your friends and say, hey, please pass this on to your friends and ask them to do the same. And with any luck, we can quickly get the word out to everybody in order to try to help as many veterans as we can. So once again, thanks for listening. And that's the end of this podcast.